You missed a spot. That's what she said as I stood at the sink, wrist deep in soap suds, scrubbing the same damn glass for the third time just so I wouldn't have to turn around and look at her. She wasn't even looking at me when she said it, just scrolling on her phone, legs crossed on the couch, a blanket over her knees like she was royalty in a cold castle. I didn't answer. I didn't trust my voice. Because what I wanted to say was, you missed a decade. You missed all the birthdays I spent planning, the anniversary notes I left taped to your steering wheel, the nights I rubbed your back without asking for anything in return. You missed how I shrunk myself to fit into the quiet spaces of your disinterest. But instead, I rinsed the glass and placed it upside down on the drying rack like a good little husband. She didn't thank me. She never did. 3 weeks ago, she started calling me practical. Not sweet, not thoughtful, just practical. I think it was supposed to be a compliment. She said it after I fixed the cabinet hinge that had been broken for 2 months. That's why I married you, she laughed. You're practical. Reliable. I laughed too, then realized she was serious. That was all I was to her now. A screwdriver with a pulse. So I made a quiet decision. I stopped texting her during the day. She didn't notice. I stopped initiating conversation at dinner. She filled the silence with TV. I started tracking the hours I spent doing chores, almost like I was billing her for services rendered. I stopped offering hugs. She stopped asking questions. Our house became an operating system, efficient, cold, functional. And then last Friday happened. She walked into the kitchen with a grocery list, handed it to me, and said, "Can you take care of this? I'm meeting Amber for lunch." Oh, and the dry cleaning too, please. That was it. No kiss. No, how's your day? No, thank you. Just instructions, like I was her app-controlled assistant. So I did it. Every item. Perfectly. I even had time to tighten the curtain rod she mentioned 6 months ago. I refilled her car's windshield fluid. I rotated the laundry. I wiped down every counter, cleaned the sink drain, and organized the spice rack alphabetically. And when she came home and said, "Wow, it's like I have a personal house manager," I just smiled and replied, "Exactly." She didn't realize what I meant, not yet. But the look in her eyes flickered. Because for the first time in years, I wasn't giving her love. I was giving her what she said she wanted. Just duties. Saturday morning felt different, not to her, but to me. She was in the bedroom reorganizing her side of the closet, muttering about needing more hangers. I was downstairs vacuuming the hallway, making a mental note to reseal the shower grout, and planning which tasks I'd handle next like a project manager, not a husband. There was something oddly empowering about it, this mechanical sense of purpose. No expectations. No emotions. Just execution. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't waiting for her to smile at me, or say thank you, or touch my shoulder in passing. I wasn't hoping for a reaction. I was simply functioning. Around noon, I passed her in the hallway. She was wearing that faded blue sweater she always wore when she was stressed. I paused, waiting to see if she'd say anything. Instead, she turned and said, "Don't forget to wipe down the baseboards. They're filthy." I looked straight at her and replied, calm as a pond, "Already did." That caught her off guard. Not because I did it, but because I wasn't defensive or frustrated or trying to impress her. I didn't ask for praise. I didn't wait for her nod of approval. I just walked past her and moved on to the next thing. That's when it started, the flicker. A subtle look I hadn't seen in years. Like she couldn't quite tell if I was being helpful or distant, and that ambiguity made her uncomfortable. The shift wasn't just happening inside me, it was starting to bleed into the air between us. By evening, I was in the garage repairing a drawer handle, and I heard her pacing upstairs. She wasn't on the phone. She wasn't watching her usual streaming show. Just pacing. I didn't check on her. I didn't ask what was wrong. I figured if I was the duties guy, then emotional support was no longer in my job description. Then came the first crack. While we were cleaning up after dinner, she dropped a bowl. Not hard, just one of those little accidental slips. I bent down silently, picked it up, and placed it in the trash. No words. No sigh. Just motion. She blinked at me and said, "You're being weird." "Weird?" I asked, turning to face her. "You're quiet. Like, unsettling quiet. Usually you'd make a joke, or ask me if I'm okay, or try to." "I don't know, talk." "I figured I was doing what you wanted," I said, shrugging. "Taking care of things. Not getting emotional about it." She didn't say anything to that. Just stood there, holding a dish towel in her hand like it had suddenly become unfamiliar. Later that night, I slept on my side of the bed, facing the wall. She didn't say goodnight. but I heard her turning more than usual. Restless. She didn't reach for me, but she didn't sleep easily either. That was new. The next day was Sunday, laundry day, grocery day, yard work day. I did it all without comment. I made her tea without asking, cleaned the patio, fixed a leaky pipe under the sink. While she scrolled her phone, I scrubbed the grout in the bathroom floor with an old toothbrush. And still, I didn't look at her once. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't manipulation. I wasn't trying to make her feel guilty. I was simply giving her what she said she needed, a man who gets things done and doesn't ask questions. A reliable, unemotional, efficient life partner. I thought she'd be relieved. But that evening, while I was chopping carrots for the soup, she leaned against the counter and said, "Are you mad at me?" "No," I answered honestly. Just focused on the list. She didn't say anything. Just stood there, watching me slice in silence. Then she turned away, went upstairs, and closed the bedroom door behind her. Not a slam, just a soft, uncertain click. I smiled, not because I wanted to hurt her, but because I'd finally found the boundary she thought didn't exist. That's when I knew she wasn't used to being invisible. But I was. And now the roles were reversed. The thing about silence is, it's not always empty. Sometimes it hums. Sometimes it vibrates so loudly through the walls that even the clocks start ticking off beat. That week, our house wasn't quiet, it was charged. Everything I did became a mirror, reflecting her words back at her in perfect stillness. On Monday, she came home from work and paused in the doorway. I had already taken out the trash, swept the entryway, prepared dinner, and folded a fresh set of towels for the bathroom. Everything was done before she could ask, and still I didn't greet her. I just nodded and returned to slicing peppers like I was working in a restaurant kitchen, not our home. She stood there longer than usual, holding her purse like she forgot how to set it down. Eventually, she muttered, "Smells good," and wandered off toward the bedroom. No kiss. No hug. No warmth. But now, the absence of those things didn't feel like my failure anymore. It felt like her discomfort. 2 days later, I came home to find her in the living room, not watching TV, not reading, just sitting there with a throw blanket bunched up in her lap. She looked up and said, "You didn't text me today. Not even once." I nodded. "I didn't want to distract you. You've got a lot on your plate." She didn't respond right away, just stared at me. I could see her trying to read between the lines and finding nothing there but clean, empty white space. I was no longer offering subtext. No hidden longing. Just the neutral, well-oiled machine she thought she wanted. That night, something unusual happened. As I was getting ready for bed, she came into the bathroom and leaned against the sink while I brushed my teeth. She didn't say anything at first, just stood there in her nightshirt, watching me. Then she asked, in a voice softer than I'd heard in months, "Are we okay?" I spat out my toothpaste and wiped my mouth. "Sure," I said. "Everything's working fine." "Working," she repeated. "You keep saying that. Like this is a job." I met her gaze in the mirror. "Isn't it?" She blinked, then turned and walked out. The bedroom light stayed on longer than usual that night. I lay in the dark, eyes open, listening to her shifting under the covers. She didn't touch me. She didn't say goodnight. But I knew she wasn't sleeping. The next morning, she made coffee. For both of us. First time in. I don't know how long. She placed the cup in front of me at the kitchen table and said, "Cream, no sugar. Right?" I nodded, not touching it. "You remembered." She gave a little smile, like she was hoping it would soften me. It didn't. I thanked her, polite and distant. Then I left the cup untouched and took the laundry out of the dryer. By Friday, I saw the storm forming. She tried to initiate conversation over dinner, asked me how work was, what I had planned for the weekend, if I wanted to see a movie sometime. I gave short, accurate answers. Busy. Yard work. If you want. She kept pressing, so I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I asked her, "Why the sudden interest?" She hesitated. "Because I miss talking to you." "That's funny," I said, not looking up from my plate. "You said you didn't need that anymore." "I never said that. You said you needed someone responsible, not emotional. Someone who could handle duties." "I didn't mean you had to shut down," she snapped, and there it was, the frustration, the break in her calm. "I just needed support." "No," I said gently. "You needed a system, and I became it." She pushed back from the table, looking suddenly very small. "You're punishing me." "I'm honoring the contract," I replied. "The one you redrafted without telling me." She didn't speak again that night. But the next morning, something was off. I went to clean the upstairs bathroom, and I noticed her phone left charging on the counter. That wasn't like her. Marlene never left her phone unattended. She carried it like it was a second limb. But that day, just sitting there, open, unlocked, I wasn't going to look. I really wasn't. But then I saw the notification light blinking. Just one message. From someone named Clark. The preview line read, "Did you tell him yet?" My stomach dropped. I didn't open the message. I didn't need to. Because in that one moment, everything I thought was about boredom or distance or emotional neglect suddenly felt like camouflage for something else. I placed the phone back exactly where it was, wiped the sink, and closed the door behind me without a sound. If she wanted duties, she was about to get them. But not the kind she expected. That day, I didn't confront her. I didn't scream, accuse, or even ask. I went on like everything was fine, like I didn't see the message from Clark, like I didn't feel the weight of those 4 words, "Did you tell him yet?" burning behind my eyes. Instead, I leaned deeper into my role. I cleaned the garage shelves, donated the old blankets she kept saying she'd deal with later, and even sorted out the mess in the junk drawer that had been building for 5 years. I wasn't spiraling. I wasn't collapsing. I was collecting data. Because here's what I realized. I've been living on assumptions. Assuming she still loved me somewhere under the fatigue. Assuming she was just overwhelmed. Assuming that if I just gave her what she asked for, structure, reliability, peace, she'd come back to me eventually. But that message from Clark? It wasn't about emotional support. It wasn't about burnout. It was about secrets. And that meant everything she said before wasn't the whole truth. The thing is, Marlene's not careless. If she left her phone out, it wasn't an accident. Part of me thinks she wanted me to see it, just not all at once. Like she wanted to be caught without doing the actual confessing. That way, if I snapped, it would be my reaction on trial, not her betrayal. So I did the opposite. I played dumb. That weekend, I suggested we go grocery shopping together, something we hadn't done as a pair in over a year. She agreed, eyebrows raised, voice cautious. I could feel her trying to read me like a page that wouldn't turn. At the store, I pushed the cart. I asked about which coffee filters we needed. I even offered to cook dinner that night. She smiled a lot more than usual, touched my arm twice, commented on a scarf she thought I'd like we were some couple coming back from the edge. But I noticed her flinch when her phone buzzed in her purse. She didn't look at it right away. She waited until I was comparing salad dressings, then quietly turned her back and read the screen with her body curved inward like a closing gate. That night, I made pasta and poured her a glass of wine. We sat on opposite ends of the table. She started talking about work, how exhausting her schedule was, how she missed us time, how things felt like they were getting better lately. I nodded along, watched her swirl her wine. She asked if I'd ever thought about taking a weekend away, just the 2 of us. Maybe reset things, she said. You've been really present lately. I appreciate that. Present. That word hit me like a slap. Not loving. Not forgiving. Not kind. Just present. As if my attention was some obligation I was finally fulfilling. Like now that I was back to functioning on her terms, we could keep the charade going. I excused myself halfway through dinner, said I was tired. I left her to clean up, which she rarely did. I went to the spare room, the one she said we should turn into a home office, and I shut the door. I opened my laptop and pulled up the search bar. I typed one word. Clark. Nothing useful at first. Then I remembered Marlene used to work with a guy named Clark Mathis. Tall, well-spoken, always showed up to their staff parties wearing those tight-fitted sweaters like he was auditioning for some Netflix drama. I didn't like him back then, but I trusted her. Stupid. His name popped up again on her dental clinic staff page. Apparently he'd been brought on again as a temporary coordinator 3 months ago, when someone went on maternity leave. That was around the time she stopped looking me in the eyes. I clicked on his LinkedIn. His latest post was a selfie in front of a mirror with the caption, "Some things are worth waiting for." Posted 2 weeks ago. Comments turned off. That night, I didn't sleep. I just lay there staring at the ceiling fan spinning slowly above me, listening to the occasional creak of the floorboards as Marlene moved around upstairs. Was she thinking about him? Planning something? Was she waiting for the right moment to tell me? But here's the thing that twisted me inside out. I didn't want to confront her yet. Not because I was afraid of the truth, but because I wanted to understand what I'd become in her mind. I wanted to watch her continue this performance. I wanted to see just how far she was willing to go in line to a man she thought was too broken to notice. Because if I was just her duty-bound husband, her maintenance man, her background character, then she wouldn't see me coming when I finally flipped the script. And believe me, I was already writing the next scene in my head. By the time the next weekend rolled around, I had stopped guessing what she might do and started planning what I would. But it was subtle. I didn't become vengeful. I didn't plot revenge. That's not who I am. I'm not a man of action, not really. I'm the guy who waits too long to return a text because I'm worried it might sound needy. The one who apologizes when someone else bumps into him. A man whose voice gets caught in his throat the moment emotion enters a room. So no, I wasn't out to destroy her. I just wanted her to see me. I started by becoming invisible in all the wrong ways. I stopped initiating anything. No check-ins. No, good morning. No, how'd you sleep? I didn't even look at her when we were in the same room. Instead, I operated around her. Always in motion, but never in focus. And it worked. She noticed. That Saturday, she asked me if I wanted to go to brunch. We hadn't done that in ages. Just us, she said, like the words tasted strange in her mouth. I told her I had a backlog of house repairs to do. She frowned, nodded, and went without me. But she texted me from the cafe, a picture of a cinnamon roll. Your favorite, she wrote. I didn't reply. A few hours later, she came home with takeout from my favorite sandwich place, laid it on the counter like it was peace offering. I thanked her, picked up the bag, and said I'd eat it in the garage while I organized the tool drawers. She stood there holding her keys, watching me walk away like someone who suddenly realized they weren't the one in control anymore. That night, I stayed in the guest room again. I didn't even pretend to fall asleep beside her. I think that shook her more than anything else I'd done. She came in around midnight, barefoot, hair messy, wearing that robe I'd bought her years ago, the one she used to wear on lazy Sunday mornings, before things got cold. She stood at the edge of the bed and whispered, "Can we talk?" I closed the book I wasn't reading. About what? You're different lately. Distant. I raised an eyebrow. I thought that's what you wanted. Her eyes narrowed. Don't twist my words. I'm not twisting. I'm obeying. There's a difference. She looked like she was going to say something else. Maybe yell, maybe apologize, but instead she folded. Just folded. Sat on the edge of the bed and stared down at her hands. I don't want to lose you, she said finally. Her voice cracked on the last word like it had been rusted shut for years. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because she still hadn't noticed the irony. I'd been gone for months. She just never bothered to look for me. I didn't respond. I just stood up and walked past her without touching her shoulder, without offering warmth. She flinched when I moved. She was expecting softness, the Everett who always smoothed the edges, even when he was bleeding inside. But that man wasn't here. I brushed my teeth, turned off the light, left her sitting there in the dark with her regrets folded in her lap like laundry. The next morning, I opened her laptop while she was in the shower. Not out of spite, not even out of paranoia, but because I needed to know how much of her life had become a separate storyline I wasn't written into. It didn't take long. There were no love letters, no scandalous photos, just a calendar invite labeled "See Monday, 8 p.m. Location, hidden. Notes, final talk, firm decision." I stared at that phrase, final talk, and felt something between nausea and clarity settle in my chest. That night, over dinner, I asked her if she had plans Monday evening. She blinked. No, not really. Why? I shrugged. Just thought we could finally take that walk. The one you've been mentioning for weeks. Her face tensed, just for a second, then softened again. Sure. That sounds nice. I smiled and excused myself early, saying I had to finish folding laundry. But I wasn't folding anything. I was installing a security camera by the front door. Monday came cloaked in the illusion of normalcy. Morning coffee. Brief eye contact. She left for work in her slate gray coat and said, "Have a good day," like nothing was shifting beneath the floorboards. I said, "You too," and watched her drive away through the front window, already knowing she wasn't heading where she claimed. I sat with that lie, not angrily, but analytically. It didn't hurt like I thought it would. It just confirmed what I already suspected. This wasn't some slow drift of affection. This was a planned retreat. One she didn't think I was sharp enough to notice. I spent the day preparing, not with confrontation in mind, but with quiet observation. I checked the camera feed on my phone from time to time. Nothing suspicious. Nothing yet. She returned at her usual hour. She made grilled chicken, tossed it with arugula, and ate while scrolling her phone like everything in the world was perfectly balanced. She mentioned her sister had texted something annoying. I nodded, told her I was heading to the garage to fix the drawer in the laundry room. Instead, I opened the app and watched. At 7:58 p.m., she changed. Not into pajamas like she usually did, but into jeans and that leather jacket she never wears for anything casual. She did her makeup quickly in the hallway mirror, subtle but purposeful. Then she hesitated by the door. Stood still for about 30 seconds. I could almost hear her pulse through the camera's mic. She wasn't nervous because of what she was doing. She was nervous because of what she wasn't saying. She opened the door and left. No goodbye. No explanation. Just like that, gone. 10 minutes later, the camera caught Clark's car pulling up. It was him. Tall, smug, with that irritating swagger that looked like it had been practiced in a mirror. She climbed into the passenger seat, and for a moment, I thought I'd feel something raw. Rage, jealousy, despair. But all I felt was distance. Like I was watching a show I'd already seen 100 times. I didn't follow them. I didn't need to. I went upstairs instead. Sat on the bed we used to share. Took in the smell of her perfume still clinging to the comforter. Then I opened her closet and pulled out the shoebox she kept at the back, the one I wasn't supposed to know about. She called it her keepsake box. I used to think it held old letters, birthday cards, maybe that concert ticket from our third date. Inside were 3 folded letters, a USB flash drive, and a photograph of her and Clark at some kind of lake house. Arms wrapped. Her head on his chest. Same smile she used to give me, only now faded. I took the USB, closed the box, and put everything back exactly how it was. Then I waited. She came home at 10:24. I was sitting on the couch with a crossword puzzle. She walked in like nothing had happened. A little too chipper. A little too light on her feet. She kissed the top of my head and said, "Sorry I was out longer than expected. Amber's friend had some sort of crisis." I said nothing. Just circled the word lies on the page. It wasn't even a clue. She changed into pajamas. Brushed her teeth. Crawled into bed beside me like the betrayal she was hiding hadn't left fingerprints on the steering wheel. That night, I didn't sleep. But I also didn't shake. I was past the part where things hurt. Now, it was about the unraveling. The real kind, not loud or dramatic, but quiet and calculated. The kind you can't undo once it starts. The next morning, I emailed myself everything from that USB. Documents. Screenshots. A few videos. One of them was dated 3 months ago. It was filmed in a hotel room. You can imagine the rest. She had recorded it herself. I recognized her voice, soft, performative, like she thought she was starring in something worth remembering. And maybe she was. Because now, I remembered everything. I remembered every time she told me I was too emotional, that I needed to be more useful, that I took things too personally. I remembered how she used to flinch when I reached for her hand in public. How she'd say she was just touched out when I leaned in after a long day. I remembered how many times I blamed myself for the distance between us, when in reality, she'd already built a bridge to someone else. The next time she looked me in the eye, she'd be staring at a man who knew everything and said nothing. Because that's what she wanted, wasn't it? Duties. Not love. Not confrontation. Just function. And I was functioning exactly as requested. The next morning, she made pancakes. Pancakes. She hadn't done that in over a year. She even used bananas, sliced thin and placed with care, just the way I used to like before breakfast in our home became silence and coffee stains. She set the plate in front of me and said, "You've been working so hard lately. Figured I'd treat you." I looked down at the stack, then up at her, and offered a small smile that didn't reach my eyes. "Thanks," I said. Very thoughtful. She watched me eat the first bite like it was an audition. I chewed slowly. Swallowed. Nodded. "Perfect," I said. "You remembered." And just like that, her shoulders relaxed. She thought she'd scored a point. That maybe, just maybe, she could flip the script without rewriting the past. But what she didn't realize was I wasn't playing the same role anymore. I was simply observing hers. Later that day, I asked her if she had anything planned for the weekend. She looked surprised, hesitant even, then said she was thinking of visiting her mother. I nodded. "Of course," I said. "You should go." She blinked. "You don't want to come?" "I'll stay and take care of things here. I have a few house projects I've been meaning to get to." She waited for more, a question, a protest, a sign of jealousy. But I gave her nothing. Just a quiet nod and a sip of coffee. That night, I transferred everything from the USB to a new cloud folder and attached a note. I didn't send it. Not yet. I just wanted it ready. I added her name, Clark's name, the timestamped footage, and 3 names in BCC, her sister, her boss, and Clark's wife. Yes, he was married too, a detail I discovered after 20 minutes of quiet digging and a little social media triangulation. By Friday, she was packing a small overnight bag. Not her usual worn-out weekender. A nicer one. Newer. I saw the edge of a black lace bra tucked between folded jeans. She was trying not to show it, but her hand shook just enough for me to notice. I leaned against the bedroom doorframe and said, "Drive safe." "I will," she said quickly. "I'll text you when I get there." "Don't worry about it," I replied. "You'll be busy." For a second, she just stood there staring at me like I'd said something coded. Then she smiled, a tight, fake little smile, and walked out the door. At 8:12 p.m., the camera showed Clark arriving again. Same car, different shirt, same smug posture. They left quickly. I didn't follow. Again, I didn't need to. This time, I cleaned. Not the house, the hard drive. I erased years of photos from our shared folders. I pulled my name off joint accounts. Removed her from my insurance. Quiet, background changes. The kinds no one notices until it's too late. I wasn't leaving her yet. That would have given her control of the narrative. I wanted her to sit in this story a little longer. Because something had shifted. She wasn't glowing anymore after their meetings. She came home more agitated, more paranoid. I caught her staring at me a few times like she was trying to decipher a language I wasn't speaking. And she was right. I had stopped communicating in the way she was used to. I no longer begged with my eyes. I no longer wilted under her silence. I had become an absence so sharp she couldn't stop touching it. That Sunday night, she came into the living room where I was reading and stood behind me for a while before saying, "Can I ask you something?" I looked up, slowly. "Sure." She hesitated, then asked, "Is there something going on with you?" "What do you mean?" "I don't know. You're different. Like, really different. It's like I can't read you anymore." I closed the book carefully and met her gaze. "Maybe you're just not used to looking." She sat down across from me, folding her legs underneath her. "Did I do something wrong?" I tilted my head. "Why would you ask that?" "I don't know. You've been so distant. Quiet. I thought we were doing better." "Were we?" "I don't know. I was trying." I nodded slowly. "Trying what?" That silenced her. She stared at me, blinking, like she was waiting for a cue that never came. Eventually she stood up, said she was tired, and shuffled back upstairs. She didn't say goodnight, but I heard her pacing again. First in the hallway, then in the bedroom, then the shower turned on. Water always calmed her down. I let her spin in it. The next morning, I slipped a sealed envelope into her bag before she left for work. Inside was a screenshot of the hotel booking she'd made, dated the same night she said she was at her mother's. No note. No threats. Just the receipt. She didn't mention it that night. But I saw her glance into her bag 3 separate times like the paper inside was whispering. She didn't sleep much after that. She was unraveling now. But she hadn't broken yet. She found the second envelope 2 days later. I left it on the kitchen table beside a cup of coffee I'd brewed just the way she liked it. Black, with a dash of oat milk, no sugar. She came downstairs, hair tied back, eyes heavy with sleeplessness, and froze when she saw it waiting there. Her hand hovered over it for a moment before picking it up. Inside were printed copies of everything I had already backed up, the screenshots, the emails, the calendar invites, the hotel receipt, even a few lines transcribed from the video she probably forgot she ever recorded. But I wasn't cruel. There was no note that said, "I know." No threats. No ultimatums. Just a post-it, stuck to the front, in my handwriting. "You wanted me for duties." I honored that. But love doesn't survive under a checklist. I was upstairs when she read it. I heard the chair shift, heard her sit down slowly. And then silence, long, breathless silence. Not the kind we used to share, empty and cold. This was full of something heavier. She stayed there for nearly an hour. I didn't check on her. I didn't have to. That evening, I made dinner. She didn't eat. She said she wasn't hungry. But she sat across from me and watched. And when I stood to clear the table, she whispered, "I don't know how to fix this." I paused, then looked at her for a long moment and said gently, "You don't." She nodded once. No tears. Just quiet surrender. The next morning, I handed her a single folded paper across the breakfast table. She didn't ask what it was. I think part of her already knew. It was the agreement. Peaceful separation. No courtroom drama. Just closure. She read it slowly, eyes trembling but dry, then asked the one question I wasn't expecting. "Did you ever stop loving me?" I sat back, thought for a long second, then answered honestly, "No. But I stopped waiting to be loved back." She swallowed hard. then nodded again. I left the house that afternoon with 2 duffel bags and a bank account in my name alone. I didn't slam the door. I didn't leave a note. I just walked out the same way I'd lived in that marriage for years, quietly, respectfully, with everything she said she wanted from me. But the difference was, this time, I had given it to myself. I moved into a small place across town. Nothing special, but it was mine. I bought my own dishes, painted the walls, set up a used coffee machine on the counter, and hung a crooked clock that ticked a little too loud. It was peaceful, empty, but not lonely. A month later, I got a letter in the mail. No return address, just my name, written in her handwriting. Inside was a single sentence. I see you now. I didn't write back. I didn't need to. Because for the first time in years, I was no longer trying to be seen. I was living fully, freely, and finally, for me. And honestly, that was enough.